You should play Daikatana on the Game Boy Color. Wait, what? Yeah, that's what I said. Daikatana on the Game Boy Color. But Shalashaska, I imagine you might be thinking and or saying aloud at this very moment. Isn't Daikatana one of the worst games ever made? Why should I possibly play it? And play a Game Boy port of it, no less. Okay, well, first of all, Daikatana isn't one of the worst games ever made. Okay, just hear me out on this one. I promise that I'm going to go more in depth about Daikatana and its issues in a future video, but the short form of my opinion is that, no, it's not a bad game. It does some things badly, and it's distinctly average at best, but it's not nearly as bad as people make it out to be. Unless we're talking about the N64 port, because not even the Pope can redeem that thing. As for the Game Boy Color version, well, that game is a different beast entirely. The Game Boy port of Daikatana is so radically different from its mainline PC counterpart that it transcends nearly all of the issues that plague this Doom franchise, and offers a really tightly crafted and solid action platformer dungeon crawler whose biggest flaw is that it bears the name Daikatana. Sure, the Game Boy game still has the same characters, it explores the same locations, and it follows the same plot as the PC game, but it's executed so much more differently. It manages to compress all of that into a tiny Game Boy cartridge without missing a lot of the big features that were meant to differentiate Daikatana from other shooters on the market. You still have your sidekicks, but they're playable characters during certain instances instead of an AI that follows you around, and they're limited to using certain weapons for that time that you play with them. You don't have a skill system, but that's not really needed in a Zelda-like dungeon crawler, really. And most of the weapons from the main game make an appearance, although they don't feel nearly as distinct and they're not as fun to play with. Here, they just do varying degrees of damage, and only one or two of them really feel unique. But you're still traveling along space and time to ancient Greece, neo-future Tokyo, medieval Norway, and near-future San Francisco. And each of those areas acts as one of the various stages to beat as you move through the game's campaign. There are about 8 levels in total, and total playtime is only about 2 or 3 hours, accounting for a lot of backtracking and exploration since the game has quite a fair bit of puzzle solving and MacGuffin collection. All in all, it's actually really surprising at how well it plays, and that's thanks in no small part to, of all people, John Romero himself, who requested that this port played like a top-down Zelda-esque dungeon crawler. You have a dedicated button to jumping, so there are platforms and obstacles to overcome, which can be a little frustrating since your jumps feel a little floaty, but it doesn't feel all that different from using something like the Rock's Feather in Link's Awakening. Okay, that's a lot of references to Zelda, I gotta stop doing that. The only difference is that your jump is permanently there all the time. You can also use the button to interact with objects like moving boulders onto lava or whatever to make a path to walk over, so it's not just used for jumping. Honestly, out of everything, I found that killing enemies was the most irritating part of this game, since they can be vicious, and the lack of any invincibility frames makes it particularly easy to get the life sucked out of you quickly, especially if you're going to be using melee weapons, which account for like a quarter of the inventory. Also, I don't know, using the Daikatana just felt natural to me while playing this game. I didn't find the guns and stabs and whatnot to be particularly enticing. Fortunately, the game does leave a lot of healing items around for you to pick up, provided that you leave them and only pick them up when you desperately need them since they're not random drops. It's a simple gameplay loop, and it's pretty much what you expect if you've played any of the classic Zelda games before.
God damn it, I did it again!
Go to the level, explore the rooms, find items and solve puzzles to progress, encounter a boss, kill it, move on. There's no overworld screen like there is in that other game, so it's more like a linked set of dungeons, but those dungeons are interesting enough to keep you going, at least for a short while. I think that given the game's length, it doesn't overstay its welcome, and so the amount of content that you get is balanced enough so you don't feel as if you're getting too little or too much. It's over very quickly, and the change in level themes keeps things fresh enough to not turn into a slog or a bore. Also, small side note, I really like that all the dialogue is color-coded between the characters. It makes differentiating who says what all the easier, which isn't strictly necessary since this game has like 300 words in it tops, but it does make the plot all the more coherent, so kudos to the dev. So, why should you play Daikatana? No, not that one. Well, okay, maybe that one, but I'll get to that later. No, certainly not that one. This one. Well, aside from the fact that it's a game that's put together fairly well and offers a completely different experience from the mainline game, it's a title that not a lot of people have played, and even fewer own a physical copy of. And that's because it was only released in Europe. Kemco, the game's publisher, decided against releasing it in North America and Japan, primarily because of the tarnished reputation of the brand due to the launch of the PC game. Funny how that worked out. Well, it was probably the sensible decision. But the good news is that John Romero released the ROM images for the game on his personal website back in 2004. So, Daikatana is a ROM that's 100% legal to download and play on an emulator, which is awesome. Yeah, it's kind of crazy to think that we live in a world where there actually is a good product that's part of the Daikatana brand. It's just buried under a heap of bad press. But don't let that stop you from playing what is a pretty enjoyable, albeit very short and simple, Zelda Lite experience. Okay, it plays like Zelda, it's really hard to not make comparisons, they're identical games almost. All in all, it's a fun time, and it's miles better than what you get if you play Daikatana on the other Nintendo console that it was released for. So that's why I think you should play Daikatana for the Game Boy Color. Or your favorite Game Boy Color emulator, realistically speaking.